So next up, we welcome the wealth of knowledge that is Peter Backman to the stage. He's going to be talking to us this afternoon about eating out in the European, North American and Indian markets. Thank you.
Asking me to share my thoughts with you today. And this is the 6th year in a row that I've been asked. But for those of you who haven't... So for those of you who haven't been at Griff for those 6 years, who am I? I've been analysing, researching and consulting on the food service sector for many years. And I love it so much that I've written a book. Restaurants also serve food. I work with operators, I work with investors, and I work with suppliers around the world to help them fully understand what's happening and, crucially, why things are changing so that they can make better informed and more rounded decisions. I work globally in the US, in Brazil, and in Europe. And I've got an exciting joint venture with my good friends Samir Kukrecha and Jasper Reed at IMMT Tassanaya in Delhi. We are in the final stages of a multi-client project investigating the Indian delivery market, and I'm going to be talking about delivery today. So, Griff has come a long way since those far-off days in 2014 when we met for the first time at the Conrad in Dubai. Those were the days when delivery was an unknown, a very small cloud on the horizon. The world has moved on apace. And over the next 14 minutes, because I've already spent a minute, I'll be looking at how delivery disrupts, the key issues that are surrounding the delivery value chain, and how they play out in the context of dark kitchens. I'll be examining the role of data, especially in terms of company valuations. And finally, I'll share my considered thoughts on the direction that delivery is taking. It goes without saying nowadays that delivery has disrupted. It is disrupting, and it will continue to disrupt the restaurant sector. The restaurant sector is a very personal business. And as I and many others have predicted, it was slow to be infected by the silicon-driven IT revolution. But now it has been infected. And the results are being felt in how social media and its technological cousins have taken hold of customers and restaurants and how they interact with each other. I think we're still in the early stages of this disruption. But already delivery has fractured relationships between restaurants and customers, and it's given rise to new forms of business, like dark kitchens, which I'll talk about in a second, and it's rearranged business models so that money flows to new parties that didn't even exist 5 years ago. And with that disruption, delivery's amazing overall growth is powering ahead. More to the point, you will be affected by the underlying spaghetti on this chart, which reflects how traditional ways of providing food are being wrenched apart and rearranged. This is the picture in the UK, which I've chosen because it's the 3rd largest restaurant delivery globally, and it has the highest spend per head of any large market globally. So in my experience, in order to find out a way out of this spaghetti, you can very usefully turn to the question of where does the money lie in the value chain? There are 3 overarching steps in the delivery value chain, and there are many more when you look at the detail. But for now, just consider that capturing the order, producing the meal, delivering it. In the far-off days of 5 years ago, the customer made the choice at the table in your restaurant. The waiter took the order in the kitchen, took the order to the kitchen, where the meal was prepared by your team. The waiter delivered the food to the customer's table. And as a restaurateur, you control the information and the costs of all these stages. No longer. It's turned into a spectrum. And so the question arises for each of the different players involved, restaurants, order capture marketplaces, kitchens without any front of house, last mile deliverers, do you split up these stages and become profitable by focusing on your core competence in your chosen focused activity? Or do you integrate the stages? Do you attempt to own them all and gain possible benefits of scale and integrated costs? And as for you, the restaurant, what do you do? Why are you needed? These questions are being thrashed out right now by many competing players. And it goes without saying, they have many different different ways that sometimes oppose each other and corporate objectives and different outcomes in mind for which route, disaggregation or integration, they want to follow. And as I said, there are many players. So let me introduce you to three that you know, of course: the app or the website that captures your order, supplying a guy on a bike to deliver over the last mile, and in between, the off-site kitchen, a dark kitchen, to produce the food. The first thing to say is that there is a lot of language surrounding dark kitchens. My dark kitchen is your shadow kitchen. There are ghost kitchens, virtual kitchens, cloud kitchens, delivery kitchens, and many more. And there are not only dark kitchens, but there are dark malls and even dark food courts. So before we can even talk about dark kitchens, we have to define them. In countless discussions with operators and investors over the past couple of years, I've developed a global typology for dark kitchens. This typology identifies the characteristics that define each type of dark kitchen. So far, I've identified 11 types, and there are more waiting in the wings. And with this typology, whenever we're talking about dark kitchens, we can agree what type we're talking about, and only then, if we want, we can give it a name: dark, shadow, ghost, or whatever. But for now, I'm going to use the word dark kitchens generically and just look at what they look like. Here are 16 Deliveroo edition sites in the UK, and they're not untypical of what most dark kitchens aspire to be. One of the problems is that the reality is not consistent with the expectations. The customer expects a restaurant meal to be lovingly crafted by a talented chef and then served by a waiter or waitress attentive to our needs. The reality of dark kitchens looks very different. In reality, food is prepared in an entirely transactional environment and then taken off-site to be delivered, which is another way of describing a factory. And because production quantities are relatively small in dark kitchens and lead times are measured in minutes, are amazingly short, that makes a dark kitchen a subscale factory. Nevertheless, hundreds of millions of dollars are being invested in such spaces. So I have to ask why. From my research and conversations over the last 18 months, my interpretation is that the money is fundamentally being used to fund acquisition of leases. Of necessity, these are for the longer term, but the dark kitchen operator lets out the space for the short term. That was the underlying WeWork approach to wealth generation, acquiring long-term leases and letting them out for the very short term. And it's clear where that model has gone. Will it work okay for restaurant delivery? Well, everyone knows that restaurants lose margin when they sell through a delivery aggregator. So here's an interesting example from a fabulous Turkish restaurant in North London. And if you're ever in the area, let me know and I'll take you there for a meal. The first point is that the takeaway menu and the menu on the Deliveroo app are identical. Identical, that is, except for the prices. Deliveroo prices are between 15 and 45% higher on every item. And notably, there are 3 items, like the chicken shish, which are nominated as popular. These 3 popular items are between 32 and 37% more expensive than the street takeaway menu. And of course, this percentage is no coincidence. It compares with the commission charged by Deliveroo of 30%, perhaps slightly less. In effect, the restaurant benefits completely from any sale made through Deliveroo. It's incremental business, and it's just as profitable, if not more so, than the street takeaway menu. Some restaurants can do this, but where the offer is a known value item, it's a much more difficult trick to pull off. When you're McDonald's, it's difficult to convince the customer that the Big Mac she buys in store for $3.99 or 23 dirhams or whatever is going to cost more online. And so she may not order if the price is higher. But then, of course, nobody knows how many app users are turned off by a higher price. Nobody knows except that Deliveroo do, Uber Eats do, DoorDash do. They know all about the restaurant delivery purchasing habits of their app users and how their users interact with their app, when they order, for how many people, which cuisines they'll prefer, how far down the list of options they'll scroll, and they use this actionable insight, of course. But whether they want to use the insight from this knowledge that they have in spades, and this information is also known as data, of course, or whether they're capable of using it is another question. And the weakness in their data is that they only know about the users of their own apps. DoorDash know all about their own app users. Meituan Wamai in China know all about their own users. Uber Eats know all about their own app users. Of course, if they knew all about the users of their competitors' apps, they'd rule the world. That, alongside consolidation to gain scale, is one of the key motors of consolidation. So we've seen Uber Eats in merger discussions with DoorDash last summer, Amazon investing in Deliveroo at the end of last year, if this is allowed, and Takeaway.com merging with Just Eat last month, again, if this is allowed. And of course, the last 2, as I've implied, are under investigation by the CMA in the UK, and the first one never came to anything. But the motivation is there, and it won't end there. Investors and operators with deep pockets and plenty of ambition, investors like Prosus, Tencent, Sequoia Capital, will see to it. Is delivery then going to take over the world, and can it happen? Well, a battery-driven aeroplane, don't be daft. The weight of the cable alone is enough to stop the airplane ever taking off. But reject that old way of thinking, accessing electricity via cable plugged into a socket. And here we are in 2020, and we have Lilium, a battery-powered aeroplane that carries 5 passengers. So what is driving the disruption in the delivery ecosystem? In essence, it's all about expectations of change. Customer expectations. They expect to have cooked meals delivered to their home, but they didn't expect that 5 years ago. Investor expectations. Billions of dollars are being invested on the basis of expectations of dominance and profit. And all of this expectation has produced a momentum for change that is running like a flywheel. But don't think all of this is happening in a far-off world. Don't think you can sit it out and wait for the change to stop. Don't think you'll be able to pick up the pieces and continue as you did in the past, because in the end, it will be a different world. And in the different world, food delivery is an end-to-end process. It covers all occasions, from click and collect to home delivery of groceries, to ultra-fast home delivery, to meal kits, to restaurant delivery. It covers all eating occasions, at home, at work, at leisure. End-to-end food delivery owned by a single company. That's Amazon's vision today, but it's almost certainly not yours. Will it become reality tomorrow? And if so, what does that mean for you as a restaurant operator? Will you be a cog in someone else's wheel? Will you no longer be in the hospitality business? Will the final customer ever know who you are? I'd like to say that the answer is in your hands, but there are forces that will make these decisions for you unless you anticipate what they mean and take the necessary, brave action that gets you going in the direction you want to travel and not the direction that someone else has decided for you. Massive and unprecedented change to the delivery ecosystem is the disruptor. What will you do to understand it and then act? So that's it. That's what I have to say. If you want to discuss it, I'm around and I'm looking forward to speaking to you. And if you can't find me, read my white paper on delivery, the disruptor. There are hard copies around, and Griff will be making it available electronically later on. Thank you very much.